Hello, everyone, and welcome to this NPLI webinar to learn about an amazing new tool, Impala.digital. Today, we have with us David Fox Estria, sorry about that, to give us a tour of this amazing tool, which is being made available free to us. Not only the sort of free to us elements that everybody gets, but there is an ecosystem component as well that's super powerful that will be made available to us for free for the next year. So just to give you a little bit of a glimpse as to how this idea began, I want to introduce Jen Harper, who kind of brought this concept to us. So Jen, you want to give us a brief intro as to how you learned about this great tool?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Jen Harper with Jake's Network of Hope. And I actually met three of the guys from Impala down at the TAG, Technology Association of Grant Makers Conference that I was at with Kim O'Brien. I know I saw her face at one point on here back in November and was sitting in a little session that was mainly at that point geared towards the grant makers, but sitting there going, oh my God, I cannot wait to get back to do more research on the flip side of this software. And I sat in my hotel room that night and just went, wow. And I was able to sit down with Shahar and kind of go through the ecosystem tool. And I just knew that this is something, you know, knowing the area that we're in, there's so many nonprofits doing such great work. And to have something that's going to give us more ability to get to and find some of these foundations and the information that's out there for us to find more fun is grantees and writing grants. You know, I knew it was going to be a really great tool to just more effectively and efficiently write grants. And I was telling the guys just before we let everybody else on, it's kind of my own little grant writer TikTok rabbit hole, because you could sit on there for hours finding, you know, new connections and things that you could be doing. So really excited for everybody else to see this and utilize it and just watch our area and our community just bloom.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And the format of today is going to be about a 20-minute intro to the tool. So you'll get to see how it works from the masterminds that created it. And then we're going to have some time for kind of a question and answer session. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. We have Simon and Laurel who will be able to monitor that and either provide answers in there, or when we sort of have it as question and answer session, discuss that for the full group. Otherwise, you know, feel free to use the raise your hand feature if you have an immediate need that you want to jump in and get a question answered. So I guess without any further ado, David, take us away.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David. From one David to another. It happens very often in very honorable company. Hi, everyone. My name is David Fox Estrin. I'm a partnerships director with Impala. So what is Impala? We are a new tech for good startup company that is making social impact data not only accessible, but also actionable. And we're very, very passionate about ensuring that there's access for nonprofit organizations. The platform was built for and with nonprofits in mind, as well as grant makers. But we have, you'll hear a little bit about my story. I'm a little bit biased here, that I'm very excited for nonprofits, small and large alike, to have access to this tool, which should, I know Jen was mentioning that she enjoys spending time on Impala, but we're very passionate about making sure you have access to this tool so you can spend less time fundraising and more time doing good or living your life, whatever it is that you prefer that you want to do. So just really excited that this tool is now available. We launched first in the state of Massachusetts just in about October. And from there, it has kind of exploded like wildfire. We're now, we have users in over 36 states and also some countries outside the United States, including in Wisconsin, thanks to many of you who are joining the platform. So this is just really cool to see take off. A way that you can think about this platform before I actually show it to you in action is it's very much like GuideStar and Foundation Directory Online combined in one place with one login. And importantly, especially for everyone here, no paywall. So you get access to all the data. And I hope, and hopefully that's good. That's music to your ears. A little bit more about me personally. I bring about 10 years of experience in the social impact sector. First, I was on the grant making side when I worked with a big consulting firm called Accenture. We had a global corporate foundation. And so I was doing a lot of consulting and advisory work directly to nonprofits, to our grantees, and monitoring and evaluation work. And then after that, I left the company to start a nonprofit organization called Together We Remember, which was really focused on countering hate and identity-based violence of all forms, in solidarity with young people all around the world. And did that for about 5 years and was a small nonprofit and learned sort of the trials and tribulations of fundraising directly firsthand. So I bring both perspectives, and I'm very passionate about ensuring that this tool gets into the right hands so that way you can do your work as efficiently and impactfully as possible. That's me. I'm also joined by my colleague, Simon Dixon, who is our COO, and he will be doing the awesome task of supporting us in the chat and chiming in where helpful, as well as my colleague, Laurel Chassé, who is our customer success manager. And if you have any technical questions or have any feedback and desires and wishes and dreams for what the platform can and should do, she will be your main point of contact as well. So that's us. And we're very excited to jump in and dive in. And if you haven't had a chance yet to introduce yourself, feel free to do so in the chat. And if you have questions along the way, fire away in the chat and we'll try to get to them in the chat. And then also we'll have time at the end for further Q&A. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so let me get my screen share going. All right, here we are. Can I get a thumbs up if folks are seeing what I'm sharing? Amazing, thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and log in. I've logged in a million times, so my credentials are saved. So you get right in once you've set yourselves up. Now, what are you seeing when we land? First, this is our search feature, our search product, and this allows you to search for any organization, over 2.9 million nonprofits and funders that have ever submitted a 990 form of some kind to the IRS. And so this allows you to find any of those organizations if we want to look at individual profiles. And just as a quick heads up, once you log in and take a look here, you can also refine your search with organization filters just by grant makers only. We can look at particular geographies as granular as city, county, state, all the way across the United States, and particular cause areas that align with the IRS's NTEE codes, which you may be familiar with, as well as some leadership filters as well. So that helps you refine your search. We also enable you to search any of the people that have ever been listed on 990 forms in terms of executives, board members, and whatnot. So there's millions of folks that we could be searching for as well. So if you have board development efforts in mind, that's a helpful place to begin. Now, before I go any further, what we're going to look at today is our search feature, which we just started talking about. I'll take you through a nonprofit profile so you can see what's shown there, a funder's profile, and then I will show you how you can build lists in Impala, like amazing prospect lists, which I'm really excited about. It's a new feature we released a few weeks ago. And then we'll shift over to ecosystems, which is kind of like everything that we're going to look at up front, but on steroids because it's aggregating all of that data. And as we look through everything, y'all probably know more about me when it comes to fundraising and development, but the hat that I like to wear, it has like 3 lenses in terms of prospecting and fundraising. We're looking at alignment with missions in terms of funder alignment. We're looking at capacity, our funders giving at the level that we need in terms of what our fundraising needs are. And finally, is there a path to a relationship so I could actually get in the door? And so when we look throughout the platform, I encourage you to think about, this is going to be helping me score and rate on alignment, mission alignment, capacity on relationship paths. And if you have any other tips and tricks, by all means, along the way, chime into the chat so we can all learn from each other. Prospecting alone is no fun. At least it wasn't for me. So let's do this together. All right, so let's continue. Let's take a look at a particular profile. So we're going to take a look at a great profile that was completed by a nonprofit in the Boston area that focuses on crisis response. So I want to make sure I can find them. So I apply a filter. Their name is Samaritans, and they again do crisis intervention and human services. They pop right up. Now, this is what a profile on the Impala platform looks like for a nonprofit organization. We can see we have the organization's name, their logo, where they're based, if they have any identity-specific leadership tags, like if they are women-led, BIPOC-led, or LGBTQ+-led. And then we also can see what the most current 990 is as well, the mission statement of the organization, their 501c3 status with their EIN number. And Jen was just sharing a few moments ago that she realized she can also add in her website and social media. And then let's take a look at what we see further below. There are 3 tabs on a profile like this. We have financials, we have people, and we also have impact. So let's take a look at financials first. Now, what sort of scenario might you consider for this? If you're not looking at, first off, if it's your own organization, I know a lot of folks are like, wow, I can see my own data visualized for me. And that is a great source to bring into conversations with your board members, with other folks who are helping you fundraise or do strategic planning work. So you can look at a profile and think about it this way. Let me see what the dynamics and trends are and the fundamentals are for our own fundraising for our own organization. But also you could think about this like I'm doing peer research. So I'd love to know, let me make a list of peer organizations or competitors, depending on how you like to frame it. And then we can take a look at their profiles and see who's funding them, among other dynamics as well. So let's imagine we're looking at a peer organization. Maybe you do crisis response work in Wisconsin, and we come upon Samaritan's profile. Let's take a look at their financials. What can we learn? Beyond just their top line financials, we can see something called funders change. This can be really, really helpful. Now, what is funders change? This is showing us the foundations that have started or stopped supporting the organization each year for this nonprofit's historical existence. So I can actually click in here and see, for example, in 2017, who started and stopped supporting Samaritans. And when we look in, we can see that, yes, there are some large donor advised funds, as well as some corporate foundations and others. And we can see how many grants they received and how much the funding was. We also can see who left the portfolio. Now, again, putting on that alignment hat, we can see, are these nonprofits, do they look like us? And if so, do they do similar work? We might add them to our prospect list and continue our research. Let's scroll further down beyond some of these nice financial visuals. Now, this is where things are going to get really rich and interesting for all of you, I hope. We can see a summary of all of the funders that have ever supported Samaritans, right? And we can see how much funding has been allocated over time, what percentage of that funder's portfolio this represents, how many grants and how many years they've been in that nonprofit has been in that funder's portfolio. And then we can see that broken down in more detail, and we can look at grants received, right? Grants research is critical. So we can see that there's over 149 grants here that we can take a look at. We can see who the funder was, any grant description from the 990 associated with it, when the grant was allocated, how large the grant was, and whether it was routed for a donor advised fund, which can be helpful as well at times. So this is the beginning of us seeing how we can do really high quality prospect research from just a nonprofit's profile. And just as a heads up, you can also change the number of results that you see. If you want to see 100 as you scroll, you can do that instead of just 10. So that is the beginning and our starting point when we're looking at a nonprofit profile. The next thing that I want to let you know about is the people tab. So we know that philanthropy is really relationship driven. So we can also see for a nonprofit or a funder, all of the executives, board members, and employees that have been affiliated with the organization, past and present. And if I want to just erase for now the past, I just click right there and I can hide that. So I see just the most recent information. Lastly, I want to show you the impact tab. Now, I'm biased. I think this is my favorite tab on a profile because this is where you as a nonprofit get to tell your story on your terms. So what do I mean? Not only, of course, you can update your mission statement, but you also can add cause areas that align with how you deliver impact in the world. You also can share the populations that you serve, and you also can add key impact metrics. And you can define the text field, the numerical metrics that align with your work. So in this example, we see that Samaritans is doing crisis intervention and human services with a lot of young people, seniors, multiracial folks. And in their eyes, key impact metrics include, they deliver well over 70,000 24/7 crisis service calls, 400 plus outreach workshops, and over 2,000 grief support services. Now, anywhere you see a pencil on a profile, you can edit that information. And in just a couple of clicks, you're able to customize your own profile. We make it really, really easy. Now, before we move away from here, I want to highlight also what we call programs. And this is where you get to share how you deliver impact in terms of your programs in as much detail as you want. And if you tag them geographically, they'll appear on the map over here on the right. Now, the coolest thing about the programs here is that if you complete your programs, they will also appear on all of your funders' profiles as well on Impala. So this is a great incentive where we're aligning, when you make an effort to complete your profile, we're helping to boost your visibility elsewhere on the platform. So other funders might stumble upon your work and say, I want to check out a funder peer and see who they're supporting. They'll snoop and explore their programs that are supported, and they might find your program. And then that's how they find you. They check out your people tab, they find you on LinkedIn, and then there you go. You might have a new relationship that is organic from a funder to you and not necessarily the other direction. So we've now covered financials, people, as well as impact. Now you might be curious about, where's a lot of this information coming from? And I want to again highlight how you can edit all the information that you're seeing on the profile, other than the financials, and I'll get to that in a second, but everything from your leadership attributes on the bottom, all the way up to your organization name, if you have an AKA, also known as your website, social media, all of that is editable just on the top right if you manage your organization's profile, right? You're not going to be updating other organizations' profiles. It's secure, it's private, you're focused on your own profile. And as far as where the financial information is coming from, we're sourcing it from the 990s, right? So we suck into our database and our system all of the publicly available 990s that have been made available submitted to the IRS. However, we know there's a bit of a lag at times. And so what we welcome is in just a couple of clicks, you're also able to submit any more current 990s that you have available. And I highly encourage you to do this. And then we take the burden of the labor on our side. So once you upload your 990, Laurel gets a notification, and then she sends that over to our team. And within about 48 hours or 72 hours, we'll have the financials up to date on your profile. And that really allows you to put your best foot forward. So that way funders can see how you're operating and whatnot. And also the incentive is that you get to see your own information visualized as I showed you on the financials tab. And I think that's really, really helpful. Frankly, I wish I had access to this sort of thing 5 years ago. It would have made my life easier when I was running and building my nonprofit. All right, so that is a nonprofit profile. And I see there's some action in the chat, and I'm just trusting Simon and Laurel that you're keeping up with those. Thank you. Now let's take a look at a funder's profile. So let's hop over to an example. Let's take a look at the Boston Foundation. Now imagine maybe we were looking at a community foundation, in Green Bay or elsewhere in Wisconsin, but the Boston Foundation, I'm based here in Boston. This is one of the largest and oldest community foundations, and they're one of our partners. So we love highlighting their profile. So let's take a look at their profile. This is where we really are going to start supercharging our prospecting work. And you might notice right away a couple of differences on their profile. Yes, they have financials, people, and impact as well, but they have two other tabs that I want to call attention to. The first is the funding tab, and then we'll take a look at what we call funding overlap. So let's take a look at the funding tab. All right, so not only can we see some top line metrics in terms of their total funding given and how many grants, that's all well and good. I'm really interested in some of these other metrics like multi-year grantees. So we get a sense of, if I make the effort to reach out to the Boston Foundation, what kind of relationship am I likely to have? How much can I apply for? And how long will this relationship last? So I get a sense right away, what percentage of their grantees are multi-year grantees? And I can see that visualized in this years in portfolio chart down here on the bottom right. I can see that a majority of their grantees have a multi-year relationship with the funder. And I can see that my journey might be anywhere from 2 to 6+ years. That's really encouraging, and that might influence how I rate or score the Boston Foundation on my prospect list, since it's not likely to be a one and done relationship. I also can see median first, second, and third year grant amounts. And this is really good because this allows us to set expectations in both directions, right? I know the Boston Foundation is a fundamental foundation in Boston, so maybe I can apply for $500,000, right? And for my first grant, hold on a second. Their median first year grant is $17,000. So maybe I should calibrate my first year ask to be more in line with these median numbers. And so I highly recommend before you're soliciting or conducting outreach to any funder on your list that you take a look at their Impala profile and see what their median giving is looking like. Beyond that, we also have this table called nonprofits change. Similar to the funders change, now we're able to see the nonprofits that have entered and exited their portfolio year over year. And when I click in, because most things are clickable into 2 layers on Impala, we can see who those nonprofits were and learn more about those grants. And again, I can evaluate whether or not there's alignment in terms of, are these organizations that sound and look similar to my nonprofit and give me a sense of alignment, and is the giving in the realm of the capacity that I need. Let's keep going. We can take a look now at grants by size, which shows us the distribution of the grants that the foundation has given. And we start to get, again, very rich information around the grantee summary. So who are all the grantees that the foundation has supported, and what are all the historic grants? We see there's over 13,000 grants and over 3,000 grantees that we can explore that are associated with the Boston Foundation. And we can see how much funding was allocated, how many grants, and the average grant size, which again helps us set expectation and calibrate our ask for the foundation. And when we look at the grants, again, we see who it was, any grant description, the size of the grant, and whether it was routed through a donor advised fund. Now, we also have some next level abilities to filter the results. So let's say I'm getting a program off the ground, and I know I'm looking for grants in the realm of maybe $10,000 to $25,000, and there's 13,000 grants here. That's a lot to look at in one go. I click right here in grants by size, and I can just look at the $10,000 to $25,000 grants, and the chart below, the table below will update, and I can take a look in that more focused manner. Now, this is all well and good. We've taken a look, we've searched for and seen both a nonprofit and a funder's profile, but I'm probably going to be clicking in and out of a ton of profiles as I'm searching. And my question to all of you would be like, where are you tracking this? Are you tracking it in an email, on paper, in a spreadsheet? That gives me a headache if I'm tracking in all those different places. So what we added was a lists feature in Impala, which I hope makes all of your lives a lot easier. And so let's say I stumbled upon the Boston Foundation, or a board member recommended that I take a look at them and maybe add them to a prospect list. I can click right here at this icon, and now I can add them to a list in Impala. And Jen, I saw your face. This might be new since you logged in recently, that this is hopefully a really cool feature. You can see that I have some pre-built lists, but let's say, for example, I had what I call Q1 prospect list, high priority funders. I could add the Boston Foundation to that list, or I can build a new list, and I can leave a note like, oh, I saw that this funder has the perfect longevity for us, or they give grants in the range of what we're looking for. And I might leave it there. I confirm, and I send the Boston Foundation to my prospect list, and I can get back to doing more research. So hopefully you can move really fast, and in just like 30 or 40 minutes of work, you might have a really robust initial prospect list or a secondary list that even takes it further. So let's now go take a look at my list. This is a list of lists. I give demos both to funders and nonprofits pretty often, so you're seeing lists that tailor to both sides of the equation. Maybe I have you see a nonprofit watch list. You could be taking a look and building lists of nonprofits who are similar to you and building ecosystems around that. You can build a prospect list, among other things that might be helpful to you. But let's go ahead and click into that prospect list. And now this is what it looks like. These are the fruits of my labor that I can begin to harvest. And I can see various data points about their financials, what the median grant size is. And we also can see, for example, if I was starting to have a conversation with colleagues about the funder, all of that is tracked here. And speaking of which, I should have mentioned earlier, you can share these lists with your colleagues. You heard me mention before, don't prospect alone. Well, now you can invite your teams to do that prospect and your board members to do this prospecting work with you. And so you can invite them to any of the particular lists that you've built in just a couple of clicks. And we're not trying to trap you in Impala. If you want to do some of this work outside of the platform, harvest the fruits of your labor, you can export this list and add further data points and do really whatever else you need to do. Export and import into other platforms by all means. So you can export that list to a CSV as you are working. So let's take a pause here. Everything that I've shared so far is free and will always be free to all Impala users, right? So that includes the search of millions of organizations, that includes profiles that you can search as well as build for your own organization, and the list feature that I just showed you. So we hope that this is a game changer out of the gate and will revolutionize how you go about your work. But now, because of the great work in our partnership with David and other friends in Wisconsin, you also have access to the ecosystems tool, which is part of our premium side of the platform. And so now we're going to shift over to take a look at that. What is an ecosystem? And this ecosystem is essentially any group of nonprofits and or funders defined by criteria that we get to set ourselves. We can look at an ecosystem based on landscape markers, such as cause areas and or geographies. We also can take a look at, so for example, I want to take a look at arts and culture in Massachusetts or education in Green Bay, right? We can get really specific. We also can take a look at funders. So let's say, for example, I've built a prospect list and I can now send that list into the funder realm and benchmark and compare all of those funders. So that way I figure out who I want to engage first, get to those no's, and hopefully get to some yeses along the way. We also, and this is a really helpful place to start right away, build a list of your nonprofit peers or competitors, and then go pop them into this list over here, into nonprofits, and then you can see their entire ecosystem, all of their funders in one place, compare them, and add them to lists as you go. So 3 different ways to build an ecosystem. And I'll also let you know that you can save ecosystems as you go, so you don't have to always rebuild them again and again, because you might have some complex ones that you're building. So for today, let's go ahead and take a look at landscape markers so we can focus a little bit. Let's imagine that we're, I usually am researching in Massachusetts. So let's say I want to take a look at Massachusetts, and I am looking for today at arts and culture. But a reminder, you can look at geographies as specific as cities, counties, and or state, and also just all of the United States. And we also can look at cause areas. These are, again, the NTEE codes, which we can click into and see further levels of detail. So maybe I'm a museum, I can click in here. There's various levels. It takes a little bit of experimentation and playing around at times. Sometimes going broader is more helpful because it kind of depends on how the organizations have classified themselves in their 990 forms. I'll also add, though, really excited to share that our team is currently working on a way where you can just search by keywords. So we can kind of bypass some of the IRS's fixed cause area list. So a keyword search will help us get even more effective landscape searches. Really quickly, let's take a look at advanced criteria. You might see that the data comes out a little funky. So, maybe a funder or a nonprofit is skewing the data. We can include or exclude them. And we can also include or exclude donor advised fund grants, because we know a lot of donor advised funds are anonymous. So maybe we just want to wipe the slate clean of the donor advised funds. But also we can include them to see just the nature of the dynamics in an ecosystem. So for now, I'll keep it on. And let's go ahead and define the ecosystem. All right, so what we're going to be able to see now is dynamics and data on the funding side, as well as on the nonprofit side. So what do I see here right away from our summary? On the funding side, I see that arts and culture in Massachusetts is showing us that there's over $870 million in this ecosystem. It's showing us that there are well over 2,000 funders, thousands of grants, and over 3,000 nonprofits, and other awesome data points. But let's click in one more level to make this a lot more insightful and actionable. So let's take a look at the funding side of the ecosystem first. All right, so let's take a look at the summary. Now, what will the summary show us? This just gives us some helpful top-level strategic insights. For example, is arts and culture in Massachusetts a growing or shrinking ecosystem in terms of the level of philanthropic funding? This might be really helpful to bring into your strategic planning conversations, into your board conversations, and just helps you sort of attune to how are we defining ourselves as an organization. So we can see that overall, the funding history has an upward trend. And we also, if you remember that funder change chart that we saw earlier on one of the profiles, we now see this, remember, aggregated across the whole sector, not just one organization. We can see the funders who have started and stopped supporting arts and culture in Massachusetts. And again, we can click in. And as we go, remember I told you about lists, as we go, we can just quickly shoot those organizations over to a list and keep going with our search and then further refine our search as we're moving. So we don't have to spend too much time clicking in, getting lost, just send them over to lists that become increasingly refined and actionable. Next, I want to talk about grant distribution. So again, a familiar chart, we can see the grants by size overall. And again, we can click in and make it more focused if we want. But this is where I begin to tell you that this is, if you do arts and culture work in Massachusetts or in Wisconsin, you create your landscape markers, this should be your definitive prospecting list and source of grants. And you shouldn't have to navigate anywhere else or to other platforms or spend lots of time in 990s. So again, we can see the funder out of over 15,000 grants, almost 16,000. We can see who the funders are, the nonprofits they're supporting, any grant details, the grant size, year, and whether it was coming through a donor advised fund. The next thing that I want to show you is the comparison tab. And this is where we take things to the next level in terms of really beginning to parse out which funders I want to prioritize, right? So in this ecosystem, I can compare and benchmark the funders to each other in one place. So it takes a few moments to load because we're talking about millions and millions of data points that our system is computing. And now we see Arts and Culture in Massachusetts is showing us that there's over 2,000 funders that we can compare to each other. Like I said before, we're often going to see lots of DAFs at the top because they're just so large and we can include or exclude them. So what does this show us? Let's say, for example, the Barr Foundation, really large national foundation based in Boston. Now we can see that they are allocating over $19 million to arts and culture in Massachusetts. And this represents 5% of their overall total portfolio. So we talked about alignment as a key criteria to rate our prospects. If this number is 5% or 14% or 20%, this is beginning to hint to us that this funder is more aligned in arts and culture in Massachusetts. And that's helpful information to me as a fundraiser. The other thing, in addition to other metrics here that we can compare, I want to highlight something like grantee change. Now, this is telling us that if it's really positive and green, it's telling us that year over year, this funder is typically welcoming new solicitations, welcoming new nonprofits in their portfolio. So this means I should maybe take a look at them and knock on their door because I could be next in a new addition to their portfolio. There's lots of other metrics we can explore, but I just wanted to key in on those few as we get started here. So that's comparison. So combined between grant distribution and comparison, this really should be the definitive data source for a lot of your prospecting work. The next thing that I want to talk about, and I just realized that I forgot to show you funding overlap on the foundation's, on the other foundation profile page. So I'll show it to you here. But essentially what overlap is, and this is really, really helpful, so I'm glad that I remembered that I forgot it, is this is showing us any two funders who support the same group of nonprofits. So let's see, for example, again, we've got a lot of DAFs here, and we're going to be adding in an ability to filter in and out some of those DAFs. But basically, when I click in, we'll see, for example, one funder and another funder support the same here. For example, the Bank of America Foundation and Boston Foundation. Let's click in here. We can see that these two foundations together support the same 40 nonprofits and for a combined giving of $15 million. And we can see who those nonprofits are and how much each funder contributed to those organizations. Now, again, this is a clue for me. I can see, do I run a museum or children's museum? I can see that there's one listed here. I can see an arts organization. This gives me a sense of alignment between these two funders. And let's say I'm a grantee of the Bank of America Charitable Foundation, and I see that there's such alignment and overlap. I might reach out to my program officer or someone who leads the portfolio, who I have a relationship with, and I might say, hey, would you mind giving me a warm introduction to the Boston Foundation? We see that on Impala, you've got a lot of overlap in your giving. So we'd love to start a conversation with them. So that's overlap. And we think that this is really something that's been unprecedented as far as something, a new way to find leads for your prospecting efforts. So now let's take a look, take a breath first. I need a breath to show you the nonprofit side of the ecosystem. So let's go ahead and click in. Again, the same concept of comparison. This could be really helpful for your strategic planning efforts. And just getting a better sense of what's going on in the ecosystem. I remember when I started my nonprofit, I had a really hard time getting insights about what my peers were up to and just getting a sense of, what were their financials like? What was their staff dynamics like in terms of size? Were they growing or shrinking in terms of their funders? And so here I can see a comparison list of all the nonprofits that do arts and culture work in Massachusetts. And I can see their financials, compare revenues, expenses. I can also see staff metrics. I can see what percentage of all the funding, arts and culture funding in Massachusetts, how much do their budgets account for the overall funding in the ecosystem, which is a pretty significant data point, among other things. And if I really want to get granular, I could take a look at revenues and the breakdown by area, as well as the expenses. I might also be able to, if I'm not about the absolute numbers, I also could take a look in the form of percentages right there. Next, I want to show you this concept of growth. So we also can see who are the trailblazers, whose budgets are growing the most, whose staff sizes are growing the most or least. So this tells me who the trailblazers are in the nonprofit side of the ecosystem. And of course, we want to see our organization pop up, and you can type in your organization name and you should pop up there as well. The last thing that I'll tell you and show you about is the insights realm. And here, I'll click into one of them. You can just see where's funding going. I can see top cities, I can see top causes, and how funding is distributed across the sector. Really helpful sort of ecosystem-wide information that typically folks might have paid consultants a lot of money to go track down that data. And now it's available to you just at the click of a button. All right, we have covered quite a bit of territory. We took a look at search. We took a look at profiles of both a nonprofit and a funder. And in that funder case, again, I'm sorry, I skipped over overlap. And in the case of the Boston Foundation, we would have seen all of the Boston Foundation, all the ways that the Boston Foundation overlaps with other funders. So if you want to see that, that's where you're going to go at a sort of funder by funder profile level. But we also can see that on the ecosystem side as well. And we took a look at ecosystems. And again, we can search ecosystems in a variety of ways and save the ecosystems as we search and build lists along the way to make our work really efficient. There's a lot more coming down the pike, but I think this was plenty to cover for an initial session today. And what we want to do now with the 20 minutes or so we have left is open things up to Q&A. I see lots of chat comments have been coming and going. So I welcome y'all to raise your hand, or Simon or Laurel, feel free to give voice to any particular questions that are really important to cover. I'll just emphasize again that you have access, everyone here has access to Impala. You should have seen invites that were just sent out recently by Laurel. You'll see an automatic, you should see an email in your inbox, forgive me. And that invite will be a one-click way for you to get on board to the Impala, get onto Impala and start to set up your profile. And then you'll just be redirected back to your inbox to confirm your account, to verify your account like you do on other platforms often. And again, you've got 1 year of free premium access to everything you've seen, and that includes lists and ecosystems. So a big thank you to David and to all of you for showing up today. And I'm excited to hear not just your questions, but also feedback. So if you've seen things that you're like, oh, that's cool, but what if ... We like granting your wishes, so please tell us what you wish you could see in the platform as well. And of course, as questions pop up after this call, you can always reach us at support@impala.digital. And that's a direct way to get in front of Simon, Laurel, myself, and we try to respond as soon as possible. We're real people, no bots, things like that. David, over to you for any quick sort of comments or reflections.
For any of you that have not yet received the email opening up your account to the ecosystem and the full tool, I'm going to be sending, assuming you registered through the regular registration process, after this meeting, I'm going to be sending Impala an updated list with all of those contact information so they can then update with anybody that has been missed in that first round. Otherwise, if somehow you got on here through another means, I tossed my email in the chat. Please shoot me an email and I'll make sure I'll get your contact info to them to get you access to everything. So yeah, let's get to some questions.
Yeah, feel free to raise your hand or just come off mute. And I don't know, sometimes the settings are a little funky where you can't actually unmute yourself. So let us know if that's the case.
One other thing too that I found that was super helpful is that I know that there are people on the call that are associated with more than one organization. And you can claim and be a part of more than one on there. And if you're having troubles with that, the Impala team is really good with their customer support and getting back and helping you figure it out.
Yeah, so that was originally inspired by a number of fundraising consultants or nonprofit consultants where you're able to, whether or not you're a consultant, you're able to claim and be a part of multiple accounts and just use a simple account switcher tool to move between. One reminder though, with respect to that, all your data, like if you have a list associated with one nonprofit, it's going to stick with that account. It's not going to cross over and be seen by multiple organizations. There's a question about which email to use to receive an invite to the platform. Really, whatever you prefer, but typically professional email addresses might be most helpful. We also try to validate if we see the professional URL associated with the organization. That helps us know that you're a real person associated with the org and have permission to be affiliated.
Thank you all so much. I also just want to emphasize that, there's a lot that David showed you here. There's a lot of detail to this. So don't worry if you can't remember it. There's a ton of resources that we have on our website. You can just go to impala.digital and you'll see up top there's a help desk. You can also always email support@impala.digital and we'll be able to let you know some great resources, little videos that only take a couple minutes that you can watch, or if there's any upcoming webinars that might be relevant to what you want to learn more about.
Yeah, we'll be sparking soon monthly gatherings for sort of like office hours questions, and of course y'all will be always invited for that to join us. Those will typically, I think, be the first Tuesdays of the month moving forward. And yes, there will be a recording that will be generated, which is why we're recording today, and you'll probably receive a follow-up note from David with the link to the recording, and feel free to forward that along to friends and colleagues who might be interested in this. And of course, we'll also be happy to invite them to the platform. And I should also note, you're also able to generate like invite a friend invites as well. You might see that if you log into the platform. Just a quick note on that. If you're inviting someone that's not in your organization, invite a friend is great. Otherwise, there's another way to invite someone who's within your account or within your organization, and then they'll automatically be associated with your organization. And if you have any trouble with that, it's usually in your account management section. If you click on your initials in the top right, you'll be able to add other users and define whether or not they're an admin or an editor on the account.
David, just related to that question, Jill Hart just asked, if you have more than one user from your organization, should you be sharing logins? And we typically say no. The best thing, you're more than welcome to, but we just think if anyone can have their own user with their own email, then that's a better way to go. And that way you can each create your own lists. You can still share them, but you can also have your own dashboard and make sure that's personalized to you. And again, there's no limit to that. So you could have 2 people on it, you could have 200.
Yeah, we definitely have subscriptions where we have one login because it's just really expensive. And the good news here is we want real people to show up as themselves and have the data that they need organized associated with their own account. So no limits here. Definitely encourage folks to log in as themselves.
Another great question from Katie Humphrey, do we audit or verify the information that's provided from nonprofits? So obviously, first, if the information comes from a 990, then we take that to be verified. But we also do our own checks to make sure, because there are mistakes that slip through. So we do look out for those, and we have a system to make sure that those are cleaned. Then when people add their own information, sometimes we'll do some checks on particular parts, but generally we let nonprofits control their own profile. And basically, our view here is that we trust the sector, and we think it's a little bit like LinkedIn. People, it's their own profile, it's how they want to be represented. And generally the sector is pretty good at looking out for one another. If they see something that looks off, we might get an email, but the baseline is we trust you.
Yeah, and Simon, there's one other question here regarding role selection, like the job title from John. And there's a question about whether we're going to allow folks to sort of have a custom submission of what their title is, or just simply select from the existing list.
I love this question. So this is a good example of how we really value feedback. John, the simple thing is shoot us a quick email at support, and we'll also make sure that this gets escalated internally. But if you feel that those don't capture your role accurately, tell us, and we'll make sure that we speak to our team, and hopefully we can get that resolved and get something in there that better reflects what you do pretty quickly.
Yeah, like for example, I was on a call just yesterday and someone's like, I'm an executive director, not a CEO. So what do I put, right? And we need to add that to the list. So we document that kind of feedback.
Or organizations that are part of a 501c3. So the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley Region, NPLI, is a program of. So if people wanted to understand who is funding us, it's sort of bundled under the corporate. Is there any thought around separating that or making it separate, the entities look differently in Impala?
Yeah, thanks for that question, David. And I think that brings up a really important topic that we're very excited about, which is creating profiles that are detailed and specific to fiscal sponsors and fiscally sponsored organizations, projects, programs. So, because some folks here might fall into that bucket. So basically, we have a design partnership with some of the leading fiscal sponsor providers across the United States right now. And so in hopefully a few months' time, all fiscally sponsored programs will be able to have their own dedicated profile on Impala, which should be very helpful, because right now you all get bundled and are hard to find or search or be discovered, and you're still doing amazing work. Like you're the nonprofits on the rise. And also, so David, in your case, that you would be, your org would be able to have its own profile, but it would still be affiliated with the community foundation. And there would be a way to differentiate between the two and see like where money is going and whatnot. So, and also David, if you have feedback about how you would definitely want that to look, we can show you some early designs and you can give us some feedback about that.
We have about 5 minutes left for questions. Does anybody else have anything they're dying to know?
I think I'm just going to jump in here as well. I put this sort of hypothetical question in the chat, but I think it's an important one. And part of our values here is to be super upfront and transparent. So what happens after the 12 months? We mentioned that everything in the platform up to profiles will always be free. And then David showed you that ecosystem section, which is premium, but all of you will get that for free as well for 12 months. So what happens after 12 months? And the clear answer here is that there won't be a nasty surprise. It's not like you're going to end that 12 months and you'll get a $20,000 bill in the mail. What we want to make sure here is that number one, it's accessible to nonprofits, particularly small ones with limited budgets. And while we're still figuring out exactly what that price point will look like, what I can tell you is it will definitely be less than getting a Guide Star and a Foundation Directory subscription. So it's going to be relatively low. But again, the goal here is accessibility. It's not about milking the sector. So there'll always be discounts, particularly based on the size of the organization.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for
that. We have a question around, does that 12-month period start now? And so basically, yeah, we're going to have that period run from basically today for 1 year. So that's the short of it. Sarah, thank you for that note about like, will the size and pricing be based on number of employees or number of clients? We haven't quite worked that out. If you have a particular perspective on that, we welcome you to shoot us a note and let us know like how you see it working out elsewhere and what feels right to you, because that's what we want to aim for.
Great. And just one last thing, a few other questions coming in. If you feel your question hasn't been answered, or if after this, you're hopping on and, you're having some difficulty, or you want to know where can I find X and Y, or how do I update this part of my profile, just shoot us an email to support@impala.digital, and one of us will answer it right away. We try to answer these really, really quickly. But yeah, we're here, we're accessible, and we're here to help.
Yeah, and there was a question, someone was asking about, Kimberly was asking about next steps. Essentially, one, if you don't see an invite in your inbox already and or in your spam folder, just send us an email, support@impala.digital, and say, please resend the invite or help me figure this out. And Laurel will probably reply to you really quickly, and we'll get that sorted so you'll be able to plug in. Besides that, we highly encourage you to log in, claim your organization's nonprofit profile, which allows you to sort of govern it and access ecosystems in that way. That's how we turn it on. And then from there, as you have time, it should take just a few minutes to update your profile. Probably the first step would be to add any other 990s that help your information really come through and shine in the most up-to-date way. And then from there, have fun with the impact tab. Or just skip all of that for now and just start building your first prospect list, and then come back to the other steps, whatever it is that is most urgent for you. Cool, Kimberly, thanks. It's good to know that went to your spam. Hard to determine who gets the junk versus not. Hopefully this isn't junk.
This is definitely not junk. And again, thank you so much, David and Simon and the full team for, again, making this available for nonprofits of Wisconsin. Thank you for giving us a great tour of the space and for being so available with your support line to help us think through how to best use this tool. If anybody has any ideas about how to, whether there's a user group of this that we should convene on a regular basis to help each other, do some research and find stuff, let's have that conversation. And again, as you may see through some of the people on this call, we have representation from across the state that are part of this. So it's open to everyone. Tell your friends, update everything with your profile information, and the more updated information we have in here, the better our search results and our research will be. So we'll be sending out a follow-up email by the end of this week that includes the recorded video for you to pass it along to anybody else in your network that might want to join, as well as kind of next steps. And again, if you're not on in the next couple of days, email me, email support at impala.digital, and we want to get you engaged with this to do some awesome research to be able to help your nonprofit achieve your mission. So thank you again to our Impala team for making this possible, and thank you all for investing your lunch hour to this greatness.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, we can pause the recording.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.